What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Casual Shenanigans Tech, a podcast where we help you with your computer builds and computer questions. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremiah, and I am joined by Dave.
Hey, guys.
It's always Dave. It's never anybody else but Dave. Me and Dave are the only hosts that like doing this.
So fun tech podcast story. Today in the office, Joel was bragging on us a little bit. Yeah.
Sarcastically or actually bragging?
Oh, he was just telling, the entire office about how our podcast is the only thing that helps him sleep at night.
Great.
He wasn't sarcastic, I don't think.
No, the sad part is he probably wasn't.
No.
But today's been a good day for me and you, Dave. The day we record this, you just hit 70,000 subscribers on YouTube. Congratulations.
This is my army.
And I hit 25,000.
Nice.
And I started a Discord channel, and I'm not sure if it's a great idea or a terrible mistake yet. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to let you test those waters.
Well, no, it's really great because I can communicate with people a lot quicker and better. And a lot of people seem to be meeting up and making friends and stuff. That doesn't really concern me, but sometimes I do just have to minimize it because there's way too much going on in there. And
yeah.
I have to concentrate on actually making content. But none of that matters for the tech episode. We're sorry it's been a little while since the last one. We've been trying to do it for a couple weeks now, but what I was kind of going to bounce off of with the subscriber thing is both Dave and I are like scheduled to the max right now. So we're very sorry, guys. This is a priority, but there's also a bunch of other priorities. So we just got to work it in when we can. And for a few weeks, there weren't that many emails, and then we got to rush all at once, and it was time to record a new one.
And also, we were supposed to record last Wednesday, and my phone did not notify me to remind me. The next day, Jeremiah's like, hey, so did you get really busy last night? I looked at my phone, and there was an operating system update that only had one line, and it said, fixed problem with pushing notifications in some scenarios. Like, well,
some scenarios.
Thanks.
Like when it's important.
So here we are.
Here we are. But let's start the podcast like we always do with the Rig Report.
The Rig Report.
Rig Report.
What?
May your frame rates be high.
Oh, nope.
And your temperatures low.
That's not how I imagine that going at all.
Well, imagine somebody who can sing doing it. Imagine James doing that. Okay. All right, Dave, have you done anything to your computer? I haven't done anything to mine lately.
No. I was just remarking that I think this USB hub, when it's full of things, really hits my boot time because I sat down to boot up the computer to record this at like 9:57, and I hit the login screen at 10. I don't know, just a long time. 3 minutes.
Yeah, you didn't buy a 1 terabyte SSD to deal with a 3-minute boot time.
Yeah, I think it's all the crap I have plugged in with USB.
I mean, I have a ton of crap plugged into USB. You have the Anchor 9-to-1 or 7-to-1 USB 3 splitter?
It's one of the nicer ones from Amazon.
Yeah.
Like, not super nice, but mid-tier.
I've got one of the nicer ones too. I think it was like $25 or something.
But again, don't forget all the USB wonk that my platform has.
Right.
Lots.
Yeah, Dave, please, when you do your next upgrade, go to the regular consumer chipset. Like, you suffer on a level that nobody needs to suffer on.
The RAM weirdness and the USB weirdness. But actually, that segues right into what I was going to say for my Rig Report. No real changes this week, but I'm thinking ahead because next year, next March specifically, it's going to be 2017, which is exactly 3 years since my last full build. And traditionally, that's when I do a rebuild. But I don't know if that's going to happen next year. I might end up doing 4 years because outside of the stuff like USB wonk, I'm pretty happy with where I am. Like this CPU, it's a hexa-core.
You have a 3930K?
Yeah, it's at 4.1 gigahertz, nothing exciting as far as overclock goes, but like it's much faster than the work computer that I just got in June, like significantly faster because of the overclock. That one's a, oh wow, complete and total mind blank. The Intel workstation chipset, help me out here, Xeon. It's a Xeon.
Oh, Xeon. Okay, sorry, I wasn't really sure where you were going with that.
Yeah, it's a Xeon at 3.5, and my 4-year-old hexa-core significantly outpaces it, even though the Xeon hexa-core is much newer, just because of the clock speed. So I'm right now I'm on an Antec CPU bench, which is kind of my go-to. They've done so many tests of so many different GPUs and CPUs, and right now the only real option you'd have to upgrade, like you can't upgrade on your socket, you have to get a new motherboard. But if you wanted to go the hexa-core route again, it's the i7 6800K. That's in the same price bracket, $434, 3.4 gigahertz. 6 cores, 12 threads, yada, yada. 15 meg L3 cache. Jeez. But compared to your 3930K, the 6800K has a 10 watt higher TDP and isn't that much faster. Yeah.
I'm looking, and we're talking like 5% to maybe 10-15% in some things, but that's 2 generations newer, and that's with neither of them overclocked. So yours is overclocked is probably pretty close to this stock, and this could of course get overclocked too. But that's the thing. There's nothing you could upgrade and get much higher per core performance if you went to one of the more consumer chipsets or one of the the hyper-threaded quad cores. But for the 3D rendering and stuff you do, the hexa-core is really nice. And honestly, there's nothing to upgrade to unless you want to go to one of the $1,200 octo cores, which is like a hideous amount of money to spend for really not enough performance to justify it.
When it comes to PC stuff, I like to stay on the bleeding edge, but there comes a point when Cheapskate Dave still kicks in, and I was like, I mean, let's.
There's a point at which you can't bleed the rest of your blood out. I mean, you gotta.
Yeah, exactly. So I was actually thinking, if I don't do a full build next year. Also, I've got 32 gigs of RAM. Like, I don't need RAM upgrades. I don't need my power supply is holding in there. And the next full build I do is going to finally replace my 2008 power supply. But if I don't need to right now, I might do a monitor upgrade instead.
That's actually really timely, because I was talking to John tonight, and I told him he ought to convince you to sell him your monitor because he's looking for the exact same thing. I was convinced him he should buy it, and you should put the money towards like a G-Sync or something.
Well, it wouldn't be anytime soon because a lot of money's been moving around recently.
Oh, don't I know?
But yeah, what I was thinking, because I just got a new Dell monitor, just a 1080p IPS, just a nice little screen. It was supposed to be for my Fallout computer that I got from the NVIDIA contest as my rendering PC, but I unboxed it.
Have you announced that officially? Sorry, is that the first time?
We announced it on the podcast.
Okay, all right, cool. Just making
sure. There's no video up yet, but it's out there. Yeah. But I unpacked it, right? And it has this nice glossy glass covering, and the bezel is like 6 millimeters around the outside. It looks sharp, and so I looked at my 7-year-old Dell with the bigger bezel, and I was like, this is going over on the rendering computer. Like, the new one's coming to my desk. So now I had this nice new Dell thin bezel next to my Monoprice 1440p, which I bought almost 2 years ago now for a work project. And I love the resolution, but it's got pretty bad light bleed. And the bezel, I kid you not, is 1.25 inches.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's horrendous.
Massive. Like, I have my smaller screen in front of it just cover up some of the bezel. Joel hates it, but it's because this panel was like one of the ones that Apple was using. So the shell that Monoprice put around it isn't the one that was designed for it, basically, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. Just a massive, massive bezel. So I wouldn't be opposed to getting rid of it for something that has less light bleed, maybe a higher frame rate.
What monitor are you thinking there?
That's where the wheels are turning, because I love 1440p. It is the sweet spot for me. I really think I would regret going 4K because I'd be back on SLI in the next 2 months. It would just be a mess. I'd be trying to power everything at ultra.
So G-Sync?
Yeah, so I'm down, I think, to 2 options. I don't think it's going to be 4K. I'm leaning towards a nice IPS G-Sync, which is a limited market, or one of those fancy curved monitors.
Ooh, an ultra wide.
Yeah,
if you think SLI is poorly supported, get ready to complain about some new stuff.
Yeah, like, I don't know how long I would keep that. I don't know if it would last as long as the screen has, but
so 3440 by 1440, would that be the?
Yeah.
That could be interesting.
I feel like my immersion would be very happy with that, and whenever it worked. So I don't know.
I'm sure your immersion would be just fine. Yeah, I'm actually looking too, and I've got a i7 4790K, and compared to also the i7 6800K 6-core 12-thread, my processor is actually pretty stinking close. Part of the reason is you can overclock it so high because it's not a hexa-core. Like, you're at 4.1, which is great for your processor, or it's a pretty respectable mid-range overclock for your processor, but like, my stock speed is 4 on mine. Yeah, and I'm running 4.5 without a sweat, and other people run theirs at like 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. So, like, with all that, I don't even know what I would upgrade to either. Like, Intel just hasn't really moved the ball that far.
They haven't really had to.
True, considering most of AMD's chips are from like 2012 right now. Come on, Zen.
And now we're sad.
Ready to answer some questions?
Let's do it.
All right, our first question comes in from Joseph. He writes into casualshenanigans@gmail.com, just like you can, to be a part of the show. And he says, hey guys, just shooting you a casual email to ask you a few questions. I messaged you about a year ago regarding a new build I was planning on, but I decided against it as I didn't have the time to game in order to justify the cost of a new rig. After suffering through new titles on an Xbox One for over a year, I've decided it's time to upgrade some parts for my PC, and I was wondering what things I should upgrade or if it would be more beneficial to look into building a new one. Here are the core specs of his build. He has an MSI 890FXA motherboard. It's an AMD motherboard. A Phenom X4 965 Black Edition quad core. That's from like 2009.
Woo.
A Corsair Vengeance 8 gigs of RAM. A Raid Max 700 watt power supply. And Dave, a GTX 460 Hawk.
Oh my.
So let's just put some context here. He's running a crappy Raid Max power supply with a Fermi card.
I mean, to be fair, it's a stripped down Fermi card. Otherwise, he'd be dead right now.
He says, my computer is just slowing down and it doesn't like to handle many new games anymore. I'm really looking forward to things like Dishonored 2, and I've yet to play the new Tomb Raider, but I've refused to get them for my Xbox One because they just don't look good, or they don't look as good as I know they should. I can't even play Fallout 4 on my Xbox anymore because it looks like ass. It really does. I don't want to continue to settle playing next-gen titles on my Xbox and would like to get back into the PC Master Race. Hey, just with that attitude, you are back into the PC Master Race. I was thinking about getting a new CPU and GPU and ideally a Corsair power supply as I don't trust this one to last too much longer. That is wise. My processor and GPU sockets are AM3 Plus and PCI Express 2.0, which to my understanding isn't really used in new hardware today. My concern is that I'll spend $500 on a new card, processor, and power supply, and my motherboard will die of old age, and I'll be stuck with components that are useless in the event that I have to get a new board. Is my motherboard holding me back? Is there anything I could upgrade to handle next-gen titles? Or am I better off building a new PC? Just curious to hear your thoughts, and I look forward to a reply. So, Dave, you ready for a link?
I have an opinion first.
All right, give me your opinion.
7 years is really pushing it. It's time.
Yeah, it's time. So, now this is going to be kind of a question of how much do you want to spend? But here's the good news, Joseph, and here's where I'm kind of a little bit of an AMD fanboy still. Your socket actually supports every current processor AMD has on the market.
I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Because the AM3 Plus socket, you have an AM2 Plus processor, but the AM3 Plus socket is fully backwards compatible. So your processor's old. You should get rid of it. But you can upgrade to literally anything AMD has right now that is not an FM2 part, any of their higher end FX chips, and higher end starts at $70 because it's AMD. And you will be totally fine. Not only that, but you can overclock them because you got a nice motherboard. And if your motherboard dies, I guarantee you'll be able to buy those motherboards for years to come. The risk is almost nothing. So you actually can do a very cheap upgrade. We're going to assume your RAM is fine. It's probably DDR3 RAM. You can keep your motherboard. Here's what I got for you. And if you want to spend more, we can spend more. This is an AMD FX 6300 3.5 gigahertz 6-core processor. If you get this, I highly recommend overclocking it. It responds very well to overclocking. Stock speed's 3.5 gigahertz. It'll hold you back in a few games, but most people can get theirs up to like 4.2 to 4.5 gigahertz, and that's pretty respectable. I mean, it's still respectable as is, but like you can really push it pretty far. If you don't want to overclock, you should get an FX 8350 or 8370, but they're like $50 more. So that's why I didn't include them in this.
Nice.
But they're octo-cores. So I also did not include a CPU cooler, because you can write back to us if you need one, if you want to do some overclocking. Otherwise, the stock heatsink's fine. And if you want to overclock, just get a Hyper 212. Corsair 550 watt gold 80 plus certified semi-modular power supply. A very nice upgrade for that Raid Max. Take it out of your case and burn it.
Yeah, don't sell that to some poor sucker, please.
I mean, you can always keep it around as a backup, but don't.
I wouldn't. I honestly would not.
And then Dave, here's a Zotac GeForce GTX 1060 3GB card for $205.
And that is the performance equivalent of the 980, is that correct?
It's about between the 970 and the 980. So
Okay.
Hold on, Dave. We need to go to GPU Bench, I think, and we need to see what the difference is between a 460 and a 1060.
It's so tiny too. It's a little Zotac mini card. Those things are awesome.
Can I even? Oh wow. Okay. So an Antec GPU bench. Let me go back. I got to go back a couple years in their archives to see if they even have a 460. I literally can't find the 460. The 560 Ti. I think that's close enough in performance.
Yeah, that's comparable, I guess.
Okay, and I'll compare it to a GTX 980 because in their older comparison thing, I can't pick whatever I want. Okay. Yep, the 980 is approximately 5 times faster.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so the 1060 3GB version, I know what you're thinking. 3GB, is that enough VRAM? Yes, it's plenty of VRAM for now. To get a bunch more VRAM, you could spend another $50 or $60 and get the 6GB version if you want to. If you can spend more money, go for it. Because right now, this build is $374 for the upgrade.
And you get a free game code with the CPU.
Oh, are they doing that right now?
It says Deus Ex, I think the new one.
Oh, nice. With a 4-year-old CPU. Cool.
Yeah, like a $60 brand new game with a $90 CPU.
Now, here's the thing. Zen's going to come out next year. It's probably going to be quite a bit faster, whatever. Unfortunately, I don't think your motherboard will support any Zen chips. I think they'll be backwards compatible on the AM4 platform, but I don't think your AM3 Plus board will be able to take them. But, dude, you do this, you will be fine for a while. Like, it's not going to be a problem. Like, even if that processor holds you back a bit, that GTX 1060 is going to crush Fallout, etc. Dave,
and you can always leapfrog too, like start with this and keep it for a year or so and then sell it and leapfrog the CPU to like a whole new build. And
absolutely, but I would not be afraid at all. Even like, yeah, you got PCI Express 2.0, oh well. You know, oh yeah, you got an old socket, oh well. You still can upgrade them to pretty new parts that are going to be totally fine. Will a PCI Express 2.0 socket theoretically bottleneck the 1060 a little bit? Yes, but it's not really going to matter. For the rest of your build, it's not going to matter. It matters for people doing Crossfire and people pushing their stuff to the limit and GTX 1080s and whatever. For you, it's not a big deal. All right. Up next is Benjamin, who sent us 2 emails. He wrote into us a while back and had an issue with fixing his desktop. He had multiple different graphics cards. He's having weird problems going on. You guys may have recognized that from previous podcasts. But he's writing into us about a completely different issue. He says, I'm currently setting aside all my PC problems to work on a surprise build for a friend of mine who wants to work on Flash animation and dabble with PC gaming, probably because my friends and I just won't shut up about our gaming get-togethers. He has a mass of old parts and he wants to see how far he can push it to make a decent content creating and gaming platform on an extreme budget. He doesn't really know how high he can go CPU-wise. He has a old small form factor Dell desktop with a triple core first gen Phenom CPU. It has 8 gigs of DDR2. It has an 120 watt power supply, but he's found a 350 watt that should slide right in. And then he wrote on his second email, it's a Dell Inspiron 546S. He's gone and he's found a 400 watt small form factor power supply. So he doesn't think power will be an issue. He's not trying to get a GTX 1080 in there. He says, so what's the highest we can go regarding CPU? And he has a friend that's offering a small form factor GTX 750 Ti because this is a small form factor computer. What's the highest end card we can do for this thing on the offhand chance we feel like doing something crazy? He says, sorry for the long back-to-back emails, guys, but always stay awesome, Ben. Okay, so the Dell Inspiron 546S is not a great desktop. It's like the one you buy for your secretary who only needs to use Microsoft Word. Like that's pretty much what that desktop is. So, but he's got 8 gigs of RAM. We're assuming his hard drive's okay. We don't really know anything about that, but that can be swapped, of course. But it's small form factor and it's using the AM2 Plus platform. And Dave, would it be safe to assume you never worked with the AM2 Plus platform?
That is correct.
That was all the Phenom X4, 945s, 955s, 965s, everything like that. So here's where it's a little bit interesting. In theory, Ben, you could get a Black Edition Phenom 945, 955, 960, 965, something like that. In theory, it depends on the BIOS of that particular Dell. So I can't look that up for you. Unfortunately, they're too old. You'd have to do some Googling based on the BIOS version, or these processors are pretty cheap, so you could always buy one and sell it if it doesn't work and get a different one. But there are some guaranteed processors that, based on my research, should work fine because this desktop was sold with them at various times. The Phenom X4 9850 and 9650, which are respectively 2.3 gigahertz and 2.5 gigahertz AM2 Plus quad cores. Not great. You said extreme budget.
Yeah.
That's your option.
Yeah.
Not great at all. If you could get one of the 945, 955, 960, whatever black editions, that would obviously be better. So it's up to you. If you can do some research and figure out if they would work, in theory, they would be fine. But that's the thing is this is all too old and there aren't many people with that desktop who tried to upgrade that motherboard. And that's part of the problem is it's a proprietary Dell motherboard with its own BIOS and everything. So it's not that easy to find information about upgrades because they didn't design it to be upgraded. And then to answer his other question, the 750 Ti is currently the fastest graphics card that is sold in a small form factor that I can find. It's not an incredible card, but you should be able to play every current gen game at 30 FPS. I don't know if the processor can, but extreme budget, it should be fine.
Yeah.
And then, it's the best small form factor card. Supposedly there was going to be a GTX 950 small form factor, which would be about 40% faster, but I can't find it. I can't find one actually for sale. So maybe it was announced and then never made, or maybe it was teased, or maybe it was a rumor, who knows. I found a couple rumors about it, a couple announcements like Galaxy said they were going to make one, never actually saw one for sale. So unfortunately, I think you're stuck with the 750 Ti. Just going to throw this out for you, Ben. I know part of this is just, having some fun with it because these processors are like $30 to $50 used,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to get them used in the links I'm sending. But just something to keep in mind. For probably $200, $250, you could buy a refurbished desktop of some kind with an i3 in it and 8 gigs of RAM, and then just add a graphics card and power supply to that. So I don't know how extreme your budget is. If you're trying to keep it way lower than that, do what you're doing. If you could bump it up to a couple $100, that computer might be too old, and it might just be time to even get another refurbished one, give that to him or something. But right back in if you actually would be interested in going that route, we'll help you. But I just assumed we weren't going to and moved on. Dave, anything to add to that? I mean, that's old AMD stuff. I know that's.
Oh yeah, that's super old. That was actually, I think, after my switch to Intel though.
When did you switch?
Early 2006.
Okay. Yeah, it was way after that. Okay. Up next is David Norton, longtime listener of the show and viewer of our channels. He says, "Hey, hope you're doing well. Please find the attached list of upgrades I want to do in the next month or two.
Ooh.
I'm planning on using the following parts of my current build in the new one: Corsair 500 watt power supply, 1 terabyte Western Digital hard drive, LG disk drive, keyboard, mouse, and monitor. Along with the following recycled parts, this is a list containing the new upgrades. Please let me know where you think I could improve it." He wants to beef up the CPU, GPU, and throw a few things on the SSD for some speed on the OS and a few games. And then he asked a question about installing Windows. We'll get to that. So the build he sent me, it's an i5 6600, an ASRock H170 motherboard, 8 gigs of Crucial RAM, Kingston 120 gig SSD, a GTX 960, and a Fractal R5 case. I have made a couple edits to it that slot in at just about the same price.
Okay.
Kept the processor and the motherboard. That's a really good, reasonable combo. It's not an overclocking combo. It's I'm just going to buy this processor, leave it as is, everything's going to be fine. And then I did upgrade your memory because with DDR4, your memory speed actually does matter more than it used to. Although I've been doing some research, Dave, and for older processors, if you can get faster DDR3 RAM paired with an older processor, it actually helps them more than I thought. It's specifically older processors with newer RAM. In some games, 10 to 15% bump in frame rates.
Whoa.
Now that's going from DDR3 1600 to DDR3 2400, which only higher end motherboards support. So it's not something that everybody can do, but that's something to keep in mind. If you've been rocking a 2500K, Digital Foundry did an awesome video called "Is It Time to Upgrade Your 2500K?" Go watch it. There's some interesting RAM stuff in there.
Ooh.
But for DDR4, it really does matter a lot more. So I upgraded your RAM to DDR4 2400. It's cheaper. Your SSD is fine, but you say you want to put a couple games on it. 120 gigs is not big enough for Windows, some programs, and games. So I got you a Corsair Force 240 gig budget SSD. It's $60 for 240 gigs. So
it's a good time to be alive.
And then a GTX 1060 3 gigabyte video card, which is way, way faster than that GTX 960 you had in there, which I think you had in there kind of as a placeholder. And then the Fractal R5 case, which I love and everything. Now, if I was going to spend more money on anything else, I would save a little money on the case and spend more money somewhere else in the build. But I do love that case. I have that case. I highly recommend that case if you want to spend the money. So go for it.
Clean is always the safe option.
Yeah.
Clean lines, clean brushed metal.
Now, Dave.
Yes.
His follow-up question, I feel like you could answer pretty easily. How would you recommend going about installing Windows on the new PC? Will I need to make a bootable USB drive and obtain my product key to reinsert it, or will it simply see Windows on my hard drive and install it from there? Since I guess he has his old hard drive has Windows on it already, his 1 terabyte. He says, I see that Windows is now tied to accounts, not hardware. So he wants to do a clean install. Should he do bootable USB drive? Does he need to get his product key? What does he need to do?
So he's going to keep the hard drive with the OS on it, install that in the upgraded build, and then...
Well, he wants to put Windows on the SSD, but he has Windows on his old 1 terabyte.
Oh, right, the SSD. Okay, let me think this through, because it's really hard to figure out what your key is now.
Well, if he says, he asks, should he need to obtain his product key? I mean, should we assume he can? If he can, it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, if he can, then just boot with the USB and install it. But I'm not sure how you find your key on 10 or 8.1 for that matter.
There's a way to get it out of your BIOS with 8.1. I have not tried that with 10.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've done a number of Windows 10 installations, and I've wondered this myself, and it's always just worked. Like upgrading, reinstalling, reformatting, it seems to just know. So you might just want to give it a shot, and if you get hung up along the way, Microsoft has actually some pretty great phone support to call in and say like, hey, my activation's not working. And no matter what, you can install it and use it for quite a while without activating it. So
yeah, you can install it as is. And I'm also sending you links to the Windows Media Creation tool, because I think it's been a while since you've done this.
Yeah.
As far as the part of creating the USB drive, we kind of glossed over. That's super easy these days. Windows has a tool, you download it, or Microsoft has a tool. You run it, you put it into the thumb drive, you tell it what version you want. It creates a bootable thumb drive. I mean, it's that easy. In your BIOS, you just have to tell it to boot off the thumb drive, and you can install Windows. So that part's super easy. He had an LG disk drive he's going to reuse, but you probably don't even need that. Like it's honestly, it's very, very easy to make a bootable thumb drive these days. But if you have any questions about your build or the edited build I'm sending to you, write back into us, of course, and we'll take a crack at it. Any other thoughts on the clean Windows 10 install?
No, I just say don't worry about it too much, because like I said, I've had good experiences throughout. So
yeah, I mean, it is the type of thing, if there is an issue, Microsoft normally is pretty good when you call them. You just got to push on them a little bit, and
yeah,
it's normally fine. Up next is Alex. Dave, what email address do you think Alex wrote into?
Probably evilviking@gmail.com, where I can forward your email to casualshenanigans@gmail.com.
There it is. Whoop, whoop. All right. Alex writes in and says, firstly, I just want to say you guys are awesome. Thank you. From helping others with these kinds of things to making incredible free content for all to listen to and watch. You're incredibly entertaining, and I really respect you. Thank you very much, Alex. My friend and I are building a PC for him. He's looking to use it for AAA games such as Fallout 4, Just Cause 3, Skyrim Special Edition, and Battlefield 1. He doesn't mind 30 frames per second, but he just wants something better than a console, as he's sick of paying for online, horrible performance, etc. Man, that PS4 Pro announcement's really pushing the console owners over to the PC, huh?
Yeah, it's like they tried to announce it to stem the tide, the migration, and yet it's got more people going like, wait, that's an option? Like, maybe I should look into this. They're worried about it.
His budget is somewhere below the £425 mark. I've scraped together a build for him myself, although I just like some critique from you guys on any way I can improve it. Here's the link. Unfortunately, Alex, your link is the thing where you linked to just my PC part picker, so it just takes me back to my PC part picker. You have to actually use a specific link for each build. Sorry about that, man. But we're still going to give you a list. He said he was considering a RX 460 and an i3, but he thought this current build would be better. And I asked if he needed a monitor, mouse, keyboard, Windows, etc., or if he already has that from a previous build and just needs the tower. That he needs windows, but they're going to get that for cheap somewhere else. And he apparently just needs the tower. So I have a link for you, Dave. If I can remember where, here it is. Ready for a link? This is a entirely new build from scratch. So Dave, can you take us through this build and tell me what you think? Because I just made it like 20 minutes ago.
New territory, uk.pcpartpicker.com. Ooh. All right, we got an AMD Athlon X4 860K, which is stock clocked at 3.7 gigahertz. Gigabyte motherboard, Corsair 8 gigs of memory, DDR3 1600, so just kind of baseline for the memory. Hitachi Ultrastar 2 terabyte hard drive, Gigabyte GTX 950, OC edition. What is this? A deep cool Tesseract BF ATX mid tower case. These names.
I think that's a Euro case. I'm pretty sure. I've never heard of that brand.
That is cheap though, 25 pounds. And then an EVGA 430 watt power supply that you see constantly. I gotta see this case. Let me look.
I mean, it's a pretty normal looking case. Like, it's not that crazy.
Yeah, that's actually a quite understated case. That's not terrible.
Yeah. So, what do you think? He said under 425. That's 361, 362.
And that was in pounds, so it's all lining up. Okay. Taking a look here. I mean, I'm less familiar with the AMD platform, but in this budget range, AMD is the way to go for sure.
I mean, this type of thing, this processor is going to hold him back a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's going to hold him back compared to Intel, not compared to the platform he's coming from.
What do you think about putting some extra money into the graphics card?
Well, that was my thought. So it's a GTX 950, which is really good. For anybody listening to this who wants a good analog, it's about as powerful as the GTX 760 and the Potato Masher. They are very, very close cards. Although in some newer, like DirectX 12 stuff, the 950 is a little better because it's on a newer architecture. But yeah, if I was going to spend any extra money, Alex, I would definitely put it into the graphics card. Just go as good as you can. Get a RX 470, 4 gigabyte from AMD. Those are pretty nice. Or an RX 480 or a GTX 1060. Those are all right up there. There's a little bit of a gap between the GTX 950 and those cards, though.
Yeah.
About a 50-pound gap, which would put him pretty close on his budget. But if he could afford it, I mean, we're talking about like twice as fast on the GPU. So
yeah, honestly, this is already an AMD build, you know, motherboard and CPU wise. I think a 480, if you can push it to that would be a great choice for this build.
Now, Alex, and here's where you should write back into us. Another way we could do this is if he's looking to build a platform he can upgrade in the future, we could also keep the money that we're spending on the GTX 950, because that is still a great graphics card. If he's coming from a console, it's going to give you console quality settings on pretty much everything. So you can stick with that for a while if you wanted to, and you could upgrade. We could do an Intel build, which will honestly last you a little bit longer in the CPU department, and you could plan on just flipping that GPU in like a year or two and getting a better one. So there's two different ways to go. You can get more GPU now and just ride this thing into the dirt. And I mean, it would be good for years. I'm not going to sound like it's not going to.
Yeah.
But you could future-proof your CPU a little bit more and plan on a GPU upgrade in a couple years if we went Intel. So I'm sending you the AMD version, because if you could only build it once and you can't touch it for 5 years, I'd probably go with this build, with possibly a GTX 1060 or RX 470, 480, whatever. But if you can upgrade to Intel and just keep that 950, that is also a really good option. You let us know if you want us to make that change. All right, Rabid Monkey wrote in with 3 emails. Rabid Monkey says, hey there, long-time listener, first-time builder. Well, I'm listening about 8 months and I'm getting married in October, so I won't be thinking about actually building until after that. So I'm starting off lying to you. But I'm seriously trying to get in mind what I'll need to get for building a PC. I plan on using it for gaming mostly, and even then, I'm not a hardcore visual fidelity expert, and I don't need the best of the best. However,
I can convert you.
I still like something with a bit of punch and something that would be easily upgraded if I need to. I was thinking around the 500 to 600 pound mark, so I went to Parts Picker and randomly picked things that were compatible, according to them, and I don't have the knowledge to say otherwise. Time isn't that important, so I'm willing to wait if I might be able to save more money. and once it's not going towards a wedding anymore. He said if it isn't going towards a wedding anymore. I'm assuming he means once it's not going towards a wedding anymore, and he's not trying to consider if he's getting a computer or getting married. We're assuming that's not... If he decides the wedding's not going to work out, the budget's about to go up by about £40,000. Actually, I don't think British people do the crazy, ridiculous weddings that Americans do. I don't think. If you guys don't do it. It's stupid. Anyway, is this a good idea or can you suggest better? Thanks for any tips and advice. Keep it casual. He sent me a link, and we're going to read the link, and then we're going to get to his next 2 emails.
Okay.
That's not as bad as it sounds. So, you ready for a link?
Yes.
There you go. Nope. That's the wrong link. That's the link I made for him. 1 second.
I think I actually have his original email already open with his build. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, cool. So his original build he picked out comes out to 641 pounds, and it has a AMD FX 6300 hexa-core processor, Arctic MX4 thermal paste, an ASRock 970 Extreme 4 motherboard, 16 gigs of G.Skill RAM, a digital Caviar 1 terabyte hard drive, the same digital Caviar 1 terabyte hard drive everybody gets, a GTX 960, a Tesseract, deep cool Tesseract, what? Wrapping it from our former masters, a Corsair 450 watt gold power supply, a Light-On DVD drive, Windows 10 Home OEM 64-bit, a TP-Link PCI Express Wi-Fi adapter, and that comes out to 641 pounds. Then his next email is, oh yeah, I was also looking at other graphics cards. I only put the 960 in there because it seemed like a good idea, but would pushing out for a 1060, 1070, 1080 be better? Same with the processor. Would going for an i5 be better? And a wireless connection is preferable, so is the plug-in card a good option, or is there a better option? Oh, and I'm not that bothered about overclocking since I don't know how to do it properly yet. It's nice to have options, but it was nice even at I'd rather it be nice even at stock. So I didn't add any fans. Do I need to? Do I need a sound card? I haven't got a clue. I've been 3 or 4 years without a computer and only had pre-built ones before. I was tempted to get another pre-build to avoid all these dilemmas, but I love to tinker and build stuff, so I definitely want to try. Third email, PPS. Would SLI or Crossfire be a good option? So Dave, let's work backwards. Is Crossfire or SLI a good option?
Nope.
All right. Next email.
Okay, wait. All right. Minor confession time.
Yes.
Okay. I did see on Slick Deals
a
few days ago, and if the budgets weren't already stretched, if I wasn't already buying flooring for the house remodel this week, it was my exact card, Jeremiah. Open box for like $545 shipped.
So why didn't you send that to your friend who doesn't have a 1080?
It didn't last long, as you might imagine.
Okay.
Which is probably a good thing because I stared at it for a while and I was like, no. But yeah, like just the fact that it was the exact same model card that I did like a triple take. What?
So Dave, before we get into the build I made for him and then we can talk about that.
Okay.
What thoughts do you have about his build, considering he doesn't necessarily want to overclock it, he wants it to last for a little while, and he's already a tiny bit over budget?
First of all, a manufacturer putting 970 in their motherboard title, I guess, is super annoying.
They've been doing it for a lot longer than the GTX has been out.
That is fair, but it's just distracting as you scroll. Memory looks good. Hard drive's not exciting, but that's fine. Power supply's okay. 6-core CPU AMD FX 6300. I imagine per core performance is not going to be amazing on that.
No, it's not. And that's the one I actually talked about for a previous build tonight. And I said, it's really best if you overclock it. And it overclocks so easy that that's a processor. It's fine stock, but if you really want to use it in a real gaming rig, I highly recommend overclocking because you could throw another gigahertz on it pretty easy. And then what about the GTX 960?
That's a bit long in the tooth. It's kind of old at this point.
Yeah. So here's my idea, and I want to see what you think. This actually came out to £6 cheaper. He doesn't like to overclock. Let's get him an i3 6100 3.7 gigahertz dual core Skylake processor.
Now, is that hyper-threaded?
That is hyper-threaded dual core.
That's good. That's good. You
bone
want that.
stock. You can't really overclock it, but you can do base clock overclocks. But I mean, that gets into the weeds really quick. But stock is about the same as a stock 2500K. Now, of course, I don't think anybody actually uses their 2500K at stock speeds, but that's just to show you it's a serious processor for gaming. Like, you can ride that thing for a long time. RAM's fine, hard drive's fine, motherboard's fine. I swapped out that GTX 960 for a GTX 1060 3GB video card. As everyone can tell, I really like this GTX 1060 3GB. If anybody's curious why I would pick that over the RX 480, especially because you can get it with more RAM for the same price, and for $40 more dollars, you can get it with 8GB of RAM. The reason is the GTX 1060 is a little bit faster stock right now, and it overclocks really well, and the 480 is an okay overclocker. But the 1060 is a great overclocker. So if you ever wanted to overclock the video card, it'd be the way to go. And stock, it's a little bit faster in most things that aren't VRAM limited, and honestly 3GB is fine for a while. Case is fine, power supply's fine, DVD burner's fine, Windows 10's fine. For his adapter, Dave, I don't know how you feel about PCI Express Wi-Fi adapters, but I'm really a lot more happy with USB.
USB is always the correct choice for just simplicity and just working.
Yeah, and the TP-Link adapter I'm sending you a link to, it's not wireless AC, but the one you put in there wasn't wireless AC either. And I've used this particular TP-Link adapter for several years in multiple different rigs. Like, I have a couple of them actually laying around. I think Debbie's using one on her computer right now. I used to use one of these adapters when I lived in a camper, and my computer was about 100 feet from the house. Before I got a really nice wireless AC adapter, when I got a wireless AC router, I used this TP-Link Wi-Fi adapter, and it was totally fine. So it's 11 pounds. It'll save you a little time, or it'll save you a little complication. It'll be easier to install, blah, blah, blah. I'd go that way. And that's about it. So that's the build I would recommend. Now, Dave, this is at 634 pounds. He'd have to push it up like another 50 pounds to get an Intel quad core. Do you think it's worth it, given that he's not super into visual fidelity and really just wants to play games? Like, what do you think?
I think for future proofing it would be nice, especially if he's going to run it at stock speeds and stuff like that. I mean, this could be dangerous, but maybe you could count the wedding gift money after the wedding and, see how things land. But I don't know. I think it's worth considering. What do you think?
It's worth considering, and my thought was going to be, since this doesn't really bother him, like having the best frame rates and maxing everything out, that processor, the 6100, is going to be great for now. It's going to be totally fine. As we know, once the processors get a little bit older and Intel has ditched this socket and moved on in 2 years, like they do with all their sockets, in 4 or 5 years, you'd probably be able to snap up a regular basic Intel quad core on this platform for like $50-$60 on eBay, especially if it's not an overclockable one. If it's a non-K chip, like an i5 6400 or 6500, it might be $50 in like 3 or 4 years. So you could always use this, and then when this processor can't keep up, pop that out, pick up a used one from the same generation and pop it in and keep going. That's probably what I would do. But like, he said he likes to tinker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably what I would do and save the money now. Typical logic says if you can spend any extra money, spend it on your graphics card. So I think that's what I would do. But like Dave said, get a lot of money for the wedding. You're feeling a little generous towards yourself. Your birthday's coming up, maybe. You could always do it. But if you're wondering, you'll be fine with pretty much every game. Some games like MMOs and stuff really, or open world games, really can use as much CPU as you can throw at them. But this will still be fine. Like, it might get close to maxing out, but it'll be fine. And then last email tonight, Dave, is not a build. Those are all the builds for this week. But it's from Zack. Zack says, "Hey guys, I just jumped back on the Shenanigans train this week, and oh boy, a tech question. It's like I never left." Zack's written it a bunch of times. "I was thinking about how Sony has claimed that their main rivals in the gaming industry at current is PC gaming, which is true. From a business standpoint, they lose far more customers to PC than they do to Xbox. Console wars, brand association, loyalty, and the fact that many people own both platforms anyway contributes to this. Personally, from a purely gaming standpoint, I feel like this might actually be a good thing. If Microsoft's secret project, he calls it Project Rocket Lizard or whatever it is, it's Project Scorpio, Zack, come on. If it's a new generation of Xbox, it would pose a really big and sudden issue for the gaming industry. Game devs would experience massive setbacks if they were forced to start releasing for 4 or 5 different platforms again, so soon after they could finally shed that burden the first time. Which I guarantee you is what's going to happen with the PS4 Pro. Like, there's going to be a lot of half-assed PS4 Pro ports.
Yep.
Or PS4 ports of PS4 Pro games. If Sony has decided not to jump on the completely new console every 3 years train, then it would take some of the strain off. Plus, and I won't pretend to speak for the entire community here, another new-gen console so soon wouldn't really interest me. They just released the last one. Even if it comes out fall of next year, it will still be too soon because these things are A, expensive, and B, a pain to replace because all the games and save data from the last gen don't port over. Or at least historically, they don't port over.
Mm-hmm.
To sum up, if Sony takes a step back for at least another 2 years and lets the PS4 Pro or otherwise run its course, I think the industry would benefit from it. That and a new Xbox so soon probably won't do so well financially, even if the last one was not the greatest thing since sliced bread, to put it mildly. It will at least be entertaining to watch Microsoft fall on their own sword with this one. But I've rambled on enough, and I'd love to give you guys thoughts on this. Don't put the brakes on the shenanigans train, Zack. So, what do you think about that, Dave? Because we don't really know what Scorpio is, but we know that the PS4 Pro is like a mid-gen jump. And Scorpio is going to be coming out next year, either as the next-gen Xbox or another mid-gen jump.
Well, I wanted to preface all this with saying that I think even at Sony and Microsoft, there's a lot of unknowns right now. Like, we're kind of in uncharted territory with a mid-life cycle reboot. So it's going to be really interesting to watch how all this shakes out. I was talking with Joel a bit today about the PS4 Pro. He's definitely going to go all in. And it's going to be, he's excited about being able to play Battlefront at full 1080p versus 900p. I'm probably not going to upgrade. So it'll be cool that we can, play the same game on 2 slightly different systems. But I am really worried about how this is going to affect development. We've seen like console developers or console-focused developers can sometimes have problems porting games to PC where the hardware variation can be massive. So what's going to happen when you've got multiple console versions and multiple PC versions, and you've got 6-7 different SKUs to make for a game? It's going to be interesting.
What I'd be really curious to hear, and we haven't heard yet, is how hard is it for Microsoft with their Xbox Play Anywhere thing? Because for a while, they didn't port any of their Xbox exclusives, did not come to PC. We had Halo and Halo 2 back in the day, Gears of War back in the day, and then like nothing for most of the Xbox 360 generation in the first couple years of the Xbox One generation. But now, just this fall, in what I would consider to be one of the greatest E3 conferences of all time as far as the things I care about, Microsoft came on stage and basically said, every single exclusive we're announcing today is PC and Xbox, and we're going to give you a copy for both platforms if you buy it digitally, which to me is just an incredibly smart move. So I'm guessing it must not be that bad to port games between the 2 platforms now. There's obviously bad ports from time to time, but if they're so confident that all of their developers working on their exclusives right now, or at least the ones coming out for the next year or so, if they're all going to be PC and Xbox, I don't think it's crazy to think that the Scorpio could come out and they're like, no, the games just work. Like the Xbox One games go right in, or for the Xbox One 2 or whatever it is. Nope, the games just work. Maybe the PS5, if it's x86 as well, maybe it's backwards compatible without much problem.
That's a good point. That could be very exciting if it works out like that.
I mean, I think this is the best chance they've ever had to do that.
Oh, for sure.
Every platform is on x86, and the PS4 and Xbox One are using like the most similar hardware they've ever had. Really, like they're just using variations of the same type of hardware almost. It's not quite like that, but it's closer than you'd think, which still confuses me how Fallout 4 works on the Xbox One and doesn't run correctly on the PS4, but that's neither here nor there. I'm actually kind of excited. I think the PS4 Pro wasn't entirely necessary, but I think more power is always good. Like if they want to start iterating a little faster and stuff, as long as the gamers don't get screwed over. I mean, I just want to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same boat where I was super excited for this console generation because of the hardware kind of unifying. And I was like, it's been so long for the previous gen. Like finally a leap forward in the technology and the graphics. And then we were sold a minor bill of goods, and it didn't quite live up to expectations. Lots of launch titles that weren't making that 60 FPS mark. And while we have seen the compatibility be a thing, like ports are so much better this gen in general, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so far. There's been some bad ones, but I think so far most things have had decent launches.
If we could just get that, the last bit of that leap forward in graphics and technology that I think just got anchored a little bit by the hardware realities, it could be a very exciting time.
It could, but another important thing to keep in mind is, what are they saying for Scorpio? It's going to be 6 point something teraflops.
Yeah.
Which basically is a 980 Ti, a little bit slower than a 980 Ti. The 980 Ti
was it a Ti? I thought it was just a 980 stock.
I think it's a Ti.
I think it's just a 980.
Okay. Well, probably somewhere in between them. But either way, that's going to be a solidly mid-range card by the time the Scorpio comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And the PS4 Pro is kind of similar to the AMD R9 380X or the RX 470, a little bit slower than RX 470. RX 470s, by the way, are $180 cards. So this isn't that big of a leap forward. But I'm pretty excited by stuff like the resolution scaling that Sony's working on, which I've seen in action on a couple of Digital Foundry's videos, and it's very impressive. I think stuff like resolution scaling and these iterative console updates could be really good. I don't think the current consoles are woefully underpowered. I think developers sometimes push the wrong stuff. Like there are plenty of games I think that are 2 or 3 years old. They look great, and it's just because the art style's good. The art direction's good. It's not because they're pushing everything forward. It's because the game just is well made. So I'm not one of the people that thinks we have to be pushing the bleeding edge with every effect and every texture resolution and everything like that, because you can stick to solidly mid-range stuff and still make a really good game that looks really, really good. But we'll see what they do.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, that's the podcast. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for listening. As always, you can write into casualshenanigans@gmail.com to get your question answered. If you wrote into the show and we answered your question this episode, if you have any questions or want to follow up on any of the different options we gave you, write back into us and we'll reply to you quick as we can. To anybody else, thank you everyone for writing in. Thank you for being a little bit patient when sometimes it's a few weeks before we can record an episode. If you ever have an emergency, we're probably not the best podcast to write into. But fortunately, most people who write in are like, I'm planning to build in the next month, next 2 months, something like that. And it's fine because we get to you most of them in 2 or 3 weeks. But thank you everybody for writing in. You can tweet at casualshenanigans. You can follow me and Dave on YouTube or Twitter or everything else. It's all in the description. We don't got to do it all tonight. Y'all already know what it is. But until next time, what was it? Hold on. I should have queued this up. It would have been smoother if I'd done it this way. Until next time, keep spending money. Keep those brakes off the shenanigans train.
I like that.
And then we can end Dave with, we'll do don't put the brakes on the shenanigans train. And Dave, you can just go, hoot hoot.
That, really? That's your train whistle?
All right, what does a train whistle sound like?
Choo choo.
Okay.
You gotta put some soul into it.
All right, Dave. So on the podcast tomorrow, that's how we should just end it and not tell Joel we're going to do it that way.
Sold.
All right, cool. Thank you everybody for listening. Stay casual.